Hi, everybody. Welcome to Philly Jazz Talks. I'm Suzanne Cloud, Project Director of the Philadelphia Jazz Legacy Project. And this evening, we're going to be talking with guitarist Monnette Sudler and Brewerytown Records CEO Max Ochester on the topic of rescuing recorded music from the past, Philly's past. Helping me tonight is archivist Jack McCarthy, who works with me on the Philadelphia Jazz Project. And we're an organization whose mission is to establish a permanent jazz archive in Philadelphia of our area jazz artists through recordings, video interviews, manuscripts, and what they call material culture, which is like photographs, programs, posters, anything that relates to Philly jazz and its history. First, I'd like to thank our funders for this series. I'd like to thank the Philadelphia Cultural Fund. They're sponsoring these monthly talks. And second, I'd like to announce what's coming up next month, which just happens to be Jazz Month. On April 6th, our Philly Jazz Talk will feature a Philadelphia legend, Odine Pope, saxophonist, composer. Also with him will be producer Alan Ciccone and Cheryl Pawelski from Omnivore Records. Omnivore Records just released the long-awaited Lost Atlantic album by pianist Hassan Ibn Ali. Some of you might know of him. Many people do not. He's kind of obscure, but most of the jazz musicians that I've met over the years knew who he was. On April 21st, our talk will feature bassist Gerald Beasley and Mike Boone, and they'll be discussing some of Philly's greatest bassists. To get a reminder of these events and other Philly jazz legacy work, please go to our website at phillyjazzhistory.org. Very simple, phillyjazzhistory.org. And you can sign up for our monthly newsletter. Also, if you feel inclined, you can also maybe give us a little donation. You can get that on the website too. So, okay. Now I'd like to introduce Monnette Sudler. Monnette, besides being a good friend of mine, is a Grammy-nominated composer, jazz guitarist, vocalist, band leader. She's known as our first lady of jazz guitar, and she began playing jazz with drummer Sonny Murray, David Murray, Khan Jamal, and the Sounds of Liberation Band with Byard Lancaster. Sudler has a long history of playing with some of jazz's monster musicians like Hugh Masekela, Grover Washington Jr., Odine Pope, Steve Turre, and Kirk Whalum, just to name a very, very few. Monnette's dynamic and electric guitar playing and her stylings have been heard by audiences all over the world. She's a graduate of Temple University College of Music after a stint at Berkeley. She's been featured on dozens of CDs, including her highly acclaimed Other Side of the Gemini, featuring Grover Washington Jr. and Reggie Workman. She is also founder of the long-running Monnette Sudler Philadelphia Guitar Summit, where she brings national and international master guitarists to Philadelphia. It's such an honor to have her here tonight to talk about the release of the Sounds of Liberation classic album. So Monnette.
Yes, Suzanne, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's great to see you.
Good to see
I
you
wanted
too.
to I wanted to ask you about this band. I mean, just let's get off. How old were you when these guys, grabbed you up out of Germantown with them and said, "Come on, join our band"?
Well, I was just out of high school, basically. Few years out of high school. I looked a lot younger than that, but yeah, I was probably in my early 20s.
How did you meet them?
I met Khan actually through a friend. I was working at the Y. I was teaching and working at the Y downtown on Chestnut Street back then, and this guy that I worked with, he said, my friend, he plays vibraphones and you guys should meet and you know, jam or something. So um I think I called Khan And I said, I play the guitar. I live on 2 Avenue, and Khan lived like maybe 5 or 6 blocks away. So he said, well, I'll come over. And I said, oh, you're going to come over? You're going to bring your vibes over here? He said, yeah. I said, all right. So he came over with Omar Hill, conga player, and we jammed that afternoon. And then we just started jamming every day, like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, And in his garage, we would go down to his garage and play.
Now, how old were these guys when they came over? Were they older or they were kind of around your age too?
No, they were older than me. They were, maybe 6 years older than me, I guess, somewhere around there. A little bit older.
Were you nervous?
Nervous? Um, I wasn't nervous. It was just nice for them to come over and jam, and Omar, he came in with his can of beer, and and he was just like chilling and being his normal self. He has been consistently the same person since I met him, uh, and so I have deep love for everybody.
Well, I was going to ask Lex, our technician, to put up one of the pictures. Let's see what they all look like back in the day here. Oh my goodness gracious! All right, why don't you, Monnette, go from left to right, and you look like you're about 13 years old.
I know.
Uh,
From left to right is Billy Mills. Um, and he was the bassist. He plays keyboards, so he's given up the bass. On and then next to Billy, of course, is Khan Jamal. And then there I am in the middle. Next to me is Byard Lancaster. Next to Byard is Dwight James, the drummer. And next to Dwight is Rashid, who played congas at that time.
oh wow! And this was one of your promo photos, right?
Yes. We were
Yeah.
actually in Byard's dining room, his family's
So
house.
now what type let's go back to Monette's beautiful, oh there you are. What kind of music were you guys rehearsing at the time?
Well, we were doing, Khan and I, we would, I would start playing a groove or something on the guitar, and Khan would start a melody, put a melody on top, and so we just kind of organically started writing music like that. And then sometimes we would choose different songs that we would want to, add to our repertoire. So I think the first gig we did, we had about maybe 5 or 6 songs, and we played them all night long. We played them slow, we played them fast, played them as a cha-cha, played them as a ballad, It was fun. Tried to
Now
make the
did you,
gig last,
yeah, I know, I've been there.
right?
um I wanted to. Now, I did some research on you guys, looking at some older newspapers, and you guys are playing a lot of black arts festivals and colleges. What were they like, and what was kind of the vibe that you were dealing with?
Well, yeah, around that time they had a lot of different festivals going on, a lot of black arts festivals, and Germantown, they had the People's Festival that used to happen in Vernon Park.
That's right. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then a lot of people, we did a lot of colleges. We went into the prisons as well. We did some concerts in the prisons. And and at that time, musicians were trying to have their own spaces and had lofts. We had a loft on Germantown Avenue. And so, um, because musicians were trying to take the control of their music back. And so that was like a whole thing for Philadelphia and New York and surrounding areas.
What was the first your first gig was what year before you recorded? Like around when was? like 70, 71 or something around there?
Yeah, probably around 70, I think. 70, yeah, around that time.
Yeah, because you recorded the album in 73.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because there's a lot of stuff happening those years in Philadelphia and well, the world with Vietnam and the protests and whatnot like that was going on. Now, how did that affect the music and the band and that kind of thing?
Well, it affected the band a lot. I mean, it was all about, you know, the revolution will not be televised and Black Power. I mean, it was, you know, it was a time for activism and, being a part of the community and being a part of lifting the Black community up and and dealing with all the different social issues that was happening at that time.
Yeah, I couldn't help thinking and reading all this stuff about you guys, what Germantown must have been like, to be right there. 'Cause Germantown's always been a great hub of diversity and music and art and all kinds of different things. What was it like those years in Germantown when you guys were practicing and just being there?
Well, Germantown was a lot. It was more vibrant, that's for sure.
Really?
Um, I mean, just commercially, the stores and the shopping areas and things were. They had major shopping areas and things like that. Now Germantown is just a shell. I mean,
Of
I
what?
really don't know what is going on, to be honest,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's really a shell of what it used to be. And musically, there was a lot more things happening. There were a couple places on like Maplewood Mall. Um, there was the place that's on Schoolhouse Lane. It
Mhm.
wasn't the Rose. It was called something else at the time.
Oh,
Yeah. Um, and then there was a place, the Village Inn was down Germantown Avenue, almost near Washington Lane, and a couple other loft places, things like that. So it was a lot happening.
it's
Attention.
it just sounds just wonderful. Now, you were developing original music, right? So what was the balance between Byard Lancaster's music and Khan Jamal's music and your music? I mean, how did you work that out with the compositions?
Well, like I said, I mean, like I said, it was kind of organic. We all kind of contributed to the music, and also Billy Mills because he was a writer as well.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So we did some of his songs. We did some of mine. Bar would bring some in, and Khan would bring some in, and then we just put it all together and for our concerts.
Well, it was a very exciting time for everybody. I mean, were you singing? Did you sing on the album? I haven't gotten. Max hasn't given me an album yet. I'm still waiting.
I
So,
did not sing on the album. We did have some singers, but I,
oh,
I didn't even meet the singers. I've never even seen them. They were kind of put on after the fact, by the producer. So no,
now
I
what
did not.
did you? Where did you record it originally?
Well, the very first recording we did in Frankfurt at a studio in Frankfurt. I
Okay.
think it was called Impact.
Pack sound. Yep.
Impact Sound. I can't believe I remember that. And then the one that Max produced and put out recently was done at Columbia University in New York.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm going to ask Lex real quick to. We do have a clip, a short, very short clip, not of music, but of the late Byard Lancaster talking and about
Like
what he
it.
thinks. There he is. Let's listen.
The free jazz that we call avant-garde, which Paris has always been the main audience and the main backers for avant-garde jazz, began in approximately 1958, 1959 through Ornette Coleman, and later Coltrane joined, and also Cecil Taylor in the late 50s. But it is an extension of Dixieland, where everyone was playing together and playing different lines, which Ornette in turn in harmonic or in melodic, and then were making a relationship. It was very confined in the 30s, but that was the freest music ever played on the planet. You know, everyone. And the closest relationship to our music has been the Indians from India. You see, playing ragas and having a scale and a mood and a tempo and a time and a message, but being able to improvise at the same time. I began playing free jazz from the very beginning because I never could play straight. And I was often studying with great people like Kenny Barron, and also Reggie Workman went to my high school, went to school before me, and Archie Shep went in my school and from Philadelphia. And many other great players, and I grew up listening to Lee Morgan when I was 14. He was in my city, and many, many others.
It's lovely to hear Byard's voice again. And it's funny, Monnette, you're talking about how when you were playing with him, it was very organic. And he's relating that to Indian ragas and Dixieland. Everybody's playing a line, and then how he felt with free music. How would you describe what you guys were coming up with? Was it something? Did it feel new to you then?
It felt. I think what we had was kind of special in the way that we always had like a groove thing happening. You know, our grooves are really strong because Billy, myself, and then our percussionists. Sometimes we had two percussionists, Rashid and Omar. And then, we just lay that rhythm down, and the rhythm was just strong. And then the melodies from Byard and Khan, just kind of interweaving within that was just, it was awesome. Uh, and then we would, allow ourselves to be more free and take it on outside, more avant-garde, and then come back in. And so it wasn't just a total avant-garde experience. You know what I mean? It was a mixture. And I think that was really the key. And I see a lot of younger groups are trying to do that now. But we had that down pat. I can't. We did.
I really cannot wait to hear the album. Did you ever, let me ask you this one question before we kind of bring Max into it. Did you ever think this album would be brought back to life so everybody could just re-experience it?
No, I'll be honest. I didn't even, no, just no. I didn't. It was a nice, pleasant surprise, and it was really wonderful hearing the music after umpteen years,
Yeah.
um, and to have it released and to have the music received the way it has been, because we did two concerts, to promote the LP, and they were both sold out.
I know,
And
I was there. It was absolutely incredible.
yeah, and so the music was wonderful. We got, you know, so just felt like getting back on the horse again. It's all good.
All right, well, we're gonna stay where you are, Monnette. I'm gonna bring Max and Jack McCarthy. Wait, I'm gonna introduce you guys. So just hold on a second. Um, so just to let everybody know who else is on the bill tonight for this wonderful Philadelphia Jazz Talk, we've got Max Ochester he's the CEO of Brewerytown Records. And let me just say it this way. His name is actually P. Maxwell Ochester. He's also known as Max, as we've been calling him all night so far. He opened a small record shop in December of 2014, and he quickly became very, very interested in Philadelphia music and music history, especially the lost classics. Max started working with a local independent record label owner. His name was Frank Lipchus. I hope I said that correctly, Max. And Jamie Guyton, of Jamie Guyton Records, to reissue their extensive back catalog of lost Philly soul and R&B classics. Now, after working, after a few reissues and getting his feet wet with this, Max turned all of his efforts toward jazz. And his first release, as we've been talking about, is the newly formed Brewerytown Records put out this record we've been discussing tonight, Sounds of Liberation, with Monnette Sudler and Byard Lancaster and Khan Jamal and so many great other people. Max is next up with my partner in crime, archivist Jack McCarthy. He's also known for his music writing for the Encyclopedia of Philadelphia and Hidden City. He does archival work with the Philadelphia Orchestra, and his current work is with our organization, the Philadelphia Jazz Legacy Project. So I'd like to welcome you both. Before we get you on here, though, I want to tell everybody who's listening, use the chat. Don't forget to put your questions in the chat. So after we get to the Q&A section, we can answer all your questions and everything. So let's go.
Okay. Well, Max, let me just start with a little bit of your bio. I know Suzanne gave some of the background, but how you really got into this. You were born and raised in Philly, but then you lived in a number of other places before you came back here, right?
I was born in upstate New York, but then raised in Philly.
Raised in Philly. Okay.
Yeah, so
but you've lived in like New Orleans and other places. And so I guess my question is, like, all these different places that you lived, did you delve into music, preserving music there, or was that something that, like, when you came back to your hometown, that really started?
Yeah, I mean, New Orleans would have been the place to do that. You know, I lived in Seattle as well, and that also has a rich musical history. But no, I've always been into record collecting. That's where it all started, with vinyl. When I got back here, I kind of settled down, had my first real job that wasn't bartending or something like that, and I started collecting records heavily. I've always collected, but I just, went out and really was kind of digging the local music and trying to figure out who these people were. And that's how it all started. So.
And I mean, as an archivist, what I really value is you're not just collecting these records, but you're collecting all of the photographs and whatever else, album covers and recording contracts or whatever memorabilia is associated with that. I mean, did that just grow out of the record collecting work naturally?
Yeah, I mean, before I opened the record store, I worked at the art museum, and before that I was one of the guys who moved the Barnes Foundation from its old location to downtown. I mean, I've kind of always loved preservation and telling stories about kind of things that I consider important and lost to time. And with records, I don't know how many people out there collect vinyl, but there's so much information if you know how to decipher it. And Sounds of Liberation was one of those groups that everyone in that band went on to make records. You can see a lot of the records behind me that, this is a Byard record. Monnette played on, remember this, Monnette, the Arnett?
I was looking at that. I said, Max, how'd you get that?
Byard, this is the first record right here, Byard's It's Not Up to Us. This was 1968, and he actually has a song called Dogtown on that. So that's where the Dogtown record label kind of name came from. Monnette's, beautiful Monnette Sudler quartet up here. This is incredible. It was just one of these things. It was it was 5 or 6 members in this group that was just unpacking, it was figuring out who everybody was and what albums they did, what kind of life they led up until the point that I met them. I mean, that really is what interested me. And Monnette can attest, like I was in her storage locker in her basement of her house, digging through piles of stuff, trying to figure out, oh my God, here's a picture of the band, or, here's your bio, or here's, a business card, or, whatever it is. So,
Right.
It's what I enjoy.
So how did you discover or get to reissue the Live at Columbia University, which was, so their first album was in the studio in 72, right? And
Yeah.
then you found this 1973.
This is the first record. I don't know if you can see that, but this is the first one. So the story of Sounds of Liberation, as far as I'm concerned, with me, started with a friend of mine who came into my shop, found an acetate of the actual record, of the first record, at a Goodwill. And that's how I knew it was on Impact Sound, because the acetate said Impact Sound on it.
Oh,
And
And then
where was it? That was in Frankfurt?
it was in the Northeast. It was underneath a shoe store.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basement of a shoe store. I don't know if you remember that, Monnette, but apparently it was I've never been there.
Yeah, it was a store. I do remember it was like a storefront
Yeah.
place, Yeah. It
Was that the place on Castor Avenue?
Yes, I think so.
Oh, okay. I know. Yeah, because I think you released some other things that were recorded there. So some early soul stuff, right?
Well, I know for a fact the Temptones, which is Daryl Hall's first R&B group, that was all recorded at Impact Sound. And there's quite a few things that were put out there.
Okay.
So then a couple months after this acetate shows up, I didn't have the money to afford the acetate. And I was digging through a box of records somewhere, and I found the Sounds of Liberation record. I found this. And, to me, when you find a record that looks like this, I just want to know everything about it. I want to know who the artist is who drew this. Yeah. I want to know who the band members are on the back. There's just so much information here that I was trying to figure out. And I think the first person, I had heard of Monnette before. She actually, I think we discovered this later. Monnette, we have church ties. My parents went to a church with, Monnette's neighbor or something. And,
Right.
that's actually, I think, how I eventually reached out. But I ended up tracking down Dwight James first, the drummer. And he and I went back and forth a couple times, and we got along really well. And he was at my shop one night, and there was a guy from Japan in town, and I introduced them. And this guy from Japan was a huge Sounds of Liberation fan. And so his name is Hiroshi. Hiroshi goes back to Dwight's house at 10 o'clock at night. Dwight invites him back to his house, and he buys a couple records off of him, which I'm kind of angry that I didn't get to do that. But this was the first time, Dwight put out this really cool record. And so he had several copies of this, a self-titled record, and Hiroshi bought copies of that. And Hiroshi called me the next day and he said, Dwight has, some more records. You should go see them. And I go over to his house, and we're digging out his basement closet because it's 40, 50 years worth of stuff. And there's a stack of reel-to-reel tapes. And on the tape, it said Sounds of Liberation, 1973, and then it had the full lineup of the band, and that's all it said. And I said, okay, this is interesting. But Dwight said it's one song. I haven't heard it since we did it. Don't know anything else about it, whatever. So I said, well, can I take it and transfer it? So I took it over to my friend Pete Humphrey's house, and Pete and I strung it up. And
by the way, Pete Humphreys did a lot of this stuff for Sigma Sound, right?
yeah, Pete Humphreys was an engineer at Sigma, and then he went on to own Masterworks,
Right.
which was Frankfurt Wayne Mastering. They changed it to Masterworks.
Mm.
So Pete and I string up the tape, and Pete has no idea what this could be. And all of a sudden, it's 5 songs on this tape, 5 completely unreleased songs. on this tape. One of them is 11 minutes long with the vocals on it that the band had never heard.
Right.
Because the band recorded this kind of groovy out there free jazz song, and then the producers, after they left and went back to Philly, added vocals on top of it. So
Now, who are the producers that did this? Monnette, do you know?
Oh God. Oh man. I can't remember his name right now. He was a DJ actually. Um yeah, I can't remember his name right now. It
Okay,
might come to me.
but he had the idea to put the vocals on.
Yeah, he did. He
Yeah.
did. And actually I think I had heard it because I was transcribing. I used to transcribe all the music for the band, so I documented everything. So I just now, as you were saying it, I just remember scribing "Backstreets of Heaven" down on paper. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Anyway,
so on that tape, there was no, really no information. And then I asked if the band would get together. I said, can everybody come? Can we find a place to everybody meet up and get together? And even Omar came out for that. Remember that?
yeah, I do.
So we all went to Khan's house in Germantown, and everybody was there. Rashid has passed on, but it was Omar, Khan, Monnette, Dwight, Billy Mills. Everybody was there, and we sat around Khan's dining room table, and I put the phone on the table, and I just said, "Here's the music," and we played, every song. And they just, it was great to watch everybody's reaction and the music they hadn't heard in 40 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did it say Columbia? I mean, or did you remember that, Monnette, or how did you know where it was recorded then?
Well, I mean, I remember being in the studio. I remember that weekend. The whole weekend was kind of a little foggy because we stayed up like all night and we were recording all day, and it was a wonderful weekend. I mean, we got a lot of music done. So
Mhm.
yeah. So once you get inside, you don't even remember what's on the outside of it. It's
Yeah,
like,
right.
Right.
yeah.
So I guess the end of that quick story was that, everybody, we sat around, we listened to the tunes, and everybody kind of went back and forth, or the band all went back and forth trying to say, oh, this is, Badi, or this is, Sweet Evil Mist, or, whatever the titles were. They were trying to collectively come up with the names, because that's what I really needed, was the information.
Right.
What is this song called? Who wrote this song? All that. And then we discussed putting it out, and everybody was on board, and it was great.
This is like 40 some years later.
Yeah.
You're trying to reconstruct the God.
Trying to put it back together.
So, and then talk about your label.
So like Susan said in the bio, I started with Jamie Guyton. I did a Honey and the Bees, the Ambassadors, Winfield Parker, who just passed away. Rest in peace, Winfield. La Tre Femme, which was a background group that they cut one single that was a really kind of, they call it sister funk, so we wanted to put that out. And then a typical newbie or rookie, I kind of felt at that time that I could be doing better by myself. This was a long established record company, and they knew the ins and the outs, and they were paying for everything and manufacturing everything, and I was doing all the work. So I said, you know what, we did one big project, and it didn't go the way either one of us wanted to go. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go out on my own. And I had met Dwight around this time, and this opportunity came available. And that's, I made kind of a hard right from R&B and early R&B and soul into like a free jazz thing. And it was well received. I mean, people love it. I mean, just for the fact that the first record was so desired, and people, paid stupid amount of money for it on eBay and stuff. to find a whole nother album of material that had never been heard. I think that really helped.
Yeah.
We did. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say a little bit of Jamie Guyton, you know, for those who don't know, that they, Arctic Records was a subsidiary of Jamie Guyton in the mid 60s. And this was Jimmy Bishop's label. Jimmy Bishop was a big DJ and producer on WDAS. And all the Arctic Records, that's where like Kenny Gamble got his start, and Tom Bell, and they were all these black musicians that were beginning to formulate the Philly soul sound in the mid 60s were all recording for Arctic Records. And then they all went on to great fame with Philadelphia International Records and other labels. But that Jamie Guyton label was the parent company for this Arctic, which was probably the most important early label in the development of Philly soul before Philly International Records, right?
Yeah,
so you were pouring through all their tapes and masters and stuff, and
yeah, I had access to all of it. I still have the spreadsheet that I look through when I get sad. I go through this 20,000 song catalog that they have that is just incredible what they have. And it never, out of Arctic, you had Barbara Mason, Yes, I'm Ready from 1965. Right. And that was the first Billboard hit that really came out of Philly, with the exception of Dwayne Eddy and Chubby Checker, the earlier kind of rock and roll stuff. But
the Cameo
soul,
Parkway stuff, yeah.
Yeah, for soul, this was like the first big thing. And they really, everybody at that time wanted to be Motown. So they were trying to emulate Motown. But they really had their own sound. And a lot of that has to do with the architects of Philly International.
Yeah, because all these guys, Tom Bell and Kenny Gamble, that's where they were cutting their teeth.
Yeah, Kenny and the Romeos. He was 18 years old. He did one of my favorite early R&B songs. So,
yeah. So you form your own record company.
Yep.
And then, so what else? I mean, I know it was it all created specifically to produce the Sounds of Liberation? Or
so my feeling behind all the stuff that I do is I want to stay as true to the original release as possible with these reissues. So for instance, on the record that we did, a couple things that are really striking is I actually tracked down the artist who did the original, the artwork for this. He was 94 years old, living in the same house he lived in the 70s. He turns out he did 4 album covers for Sun Ra. He actually stopped working with Sun Ra because he would do these beautiful black and white pen and ink things, and Sun Ra would draw all over them. He told me, and we became fast friends, and I stayed friends with him. He passed away just over a year ago.
What's his name?
Leroy Butler, Mr. Leroy Butler. And Leroy and I became really, really tight. He allowed me the same thing. I went through all his stuff, and he allowed me in his basement. And I found this work was done for Sun Ra, actually, he said, back in 1973. And Sun Ra had never come to pick it up. So he still,
Nice.
he still had it. And I said, oh my God, this is perfect. I would love to do something with this. And, I bought the piece off of him. I have the original hanging down here in my record room. And then I paid him money to allow me to use it on the front, the front cover of this record. And just to be able to kind of connect all those dots is really what my intentions are with this stuff, is to really, I think it honors the original stuff, even though it's coming out in 2020 or 2019, it still, honors and shows the legacy of all this stuff. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What
Let me just hold on a second, Jack. I just want to remind everybody who's in the viewing room, please put some questions down so we can answer them at the end. We're getting close to the Q&A. All right, go ahead, Jack. I'm sorry.
So, Max and Suzanne and a couple of others we're trying to track down these tapes from the Empty Foxhole Club. And so that's another sort of avenue of exploration. And Max, you want to talk about what you found there related to that so far? Because we're all on the trail of different tapes that we've heard are out there. And then you've also uncovered some posters, right?
Yeah, Gino's Empty Foxhole, or the Empty Foxhole, was a very short-lived club, basement club. And Monnette, you can help me with this. I wasn't around during this time, but it was in the basement of St. Mary's Church, which was on the walk at Drexel University. And
Drexel or Penn? I thought it was at Penn.
Oh, Penn. I'm sorry, Penn.
Yeah.
And what was really cool was WXPN was right across the pedestrian walk, and some of the engineers at WXPN would say that they would just run lines into St. Mary's basement and record, just set up mics and like literally, mic lines, just run them straight into the board at the station. So one thing I found was a Cecil Taylor concert from 1975. That was there's a guy named Jim Meneses here from the Stickman. XPN had this big thing where when they changed locations, they threw out all their master tapes. They threw out all the reel-to-reel tapes that they had. They threw them in a dumpster.
What?
But yeah.
Oh my God.
But they were some of them were rescued though.
So Elliot Levin, who I've become friends with, he was called by a friend at the station, and they said, "Elliot, they're throwing out your tapes. Get them." And so Elliot and Jim and Rick Iannacone and a few other people all rushed over, and they were able to rescue probably 30, 40 tapes. But one of them was the what's it called? Cecil Taylor, right? Cecil Taylor Trio. There was actually the Khan Jamal Bill Lewis record. This thing right here.
Right.
This was recorded. This was recorded.
Yeah.
And that's an incredible recording too. The other two interesting stories I've kind of researched a little bit. There was a story about Charles Mingus doing a show at St. Mary's Church, and the show was supposed to start at 10 p.m. and he called at 9:30 and said, "I don't want to play bass tonight. I want to play grand piano. Find me a piano." So the parishioner or whatever, whoever let them use the basement, had to run around West Philly asking for a piano. And then something about Miles Davis coming down from New York and wanting to sit in, and he couldn't get in or something. He was denied at the door. So it was this hub. It was this creative hub. And then, the cool story, and Monnette, I think you've heard this, after Sounds of Liberation kind of dissolved, Dwight James was there for a concert. He was at the Foxhole, and he was in the restroom, and he heard a guy called him, "Dwight, what are you doing?" And he turned around, and the way Dwight says it is, "Warren, what are you doing?" And Warren's Khan's real, government. So that was, they re-met in the bathroom at the Foxhole, and went on to perform throughout the 80s and 90s together on a lot of projects. So.
Monnette, did you play there?
I played there a lot.
Can you describe that? Because we're all trying to track down these tapes, so it would be great to have your sort of recollection of the ambiance.
Well, it was in the basement because they did it. Sometimes they had the concerts upstairs as well, but mostly the Empty Foxhole was downstairs in the basement. So it's like a big room. They had the stage. When you walked in, you could look across to the stage, and then they had the folding chairs, and then all the way down the hall they had like dressing rooms and things like that. So we saw like the art ensemble of Chicago, Norma Connor's band back then, and I saw Betty Carter there.
Whoa.
I played there, of course, with the Sounds of Liberation several times, and also Sonny Murray, Untouchable Factor. Saw Cecil Taylor there, and I mean, it was just an amazing place. Joe Sudler's big band used to play there.
Oh yeah.
And,
so it was like folding chairs set up, like
yeah.
And how big? I mean, like how many people would you say would be at a typical show? Like a couple of hundred, or?
I would say they could fit at least a couple hundred down there. You
Yeah.
know, at least they might have been able to even fit like 300 or so if it was like
Wow.
maybe even a standing room.
It's
I mean,
the
it was a
room
big
is
room. It's a pretty
the
big
room is
room.
still there.
Mhm.
The room is still there. I mean, it's still, it's being used as a performance space now, but for a dance troupe. But I was there a year and a half ago, right before COVID. I went in to check it out just to see it.
Okay.
The room is still there.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing the audiences must have been like,
Saw Max Roach there. Excuse me. I was just
whoa.
like running through my brain now.
Yeah.
I would have think these were dedicated, like really knowledgeable audiences, like that would have come to this. It's not just your usual, concert goers. These were like real jazz, serious fans, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the
So
people
we're,
came, they
I,
loved the music. They didn't come. They came for the music, and they loved it. I mean, you know what I mean. That
Was
was just the community around that time. They loved that kind of music. They were
was there a lot of Penn students too mixed in, or was it mostly folks from West Philly?
I think mostly folks in Philadelphia in general.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It's a funny thing about colleges. A lot of times the colleges don't really the students are not really the ones who attend the concerts that they have,
Right.
although they probably set it up for them, but mostly it's the community people that would come, the people that really love jazz music, and some of the students as well, but not
Right.
primarily students. No.
we
Um,
are sending out the alarm, everybody, that if you know somebody who might have been at these concerts, who might have taped any of these concerts, we'll give them complete amnesty. They can keep their tapes. Just let us make a copy. Or if you know anybody who took some of those tapes from the dumpsters, let us know, because we're trying to find them. So
Yeah.
that's just, it's
Photographs,
important music, huh?
photographs, flyers,
yeah. Okay, Max, you found some posters, right? But the
Yeah.
guy doesn't want to sell them, or
Yeah, there's another record store outside of Philly that they bought a collection, and there was some amazing, Rashid Ali quintet and a Sun Ra poster. And I think over at Ars Nova, they actually have some video footage of Sun Ra performing there.
oh,
That,
cool.
that I think he's used as the background for some of the Sun Ra shows, the orchestra shows that he's done.
Right.
So, yeah, there's stuff out there, but nobody's ever kind of put it together. And
Well, we're kind of working on that now. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's
All
part
right,
of a yeah. Let me just say one more thing.
Go ahead. I don't want to get to the questions.
All right. But this is all part of a broader effort. Suzanne and I are working on this Philly Jazz Legacy project, which is to create a Philadelphia Jazz Archives. And so we're looking actively for any recorded material that documents Philly jazz, whatever the time period, whatever the location, whatever the style, and also, photographs, clippings, anything, scrapbooks that musicians have, put together over the years. So we're trying to document all this. So the Foxhole tapes is one specific thing. Max is doing his own thing, but we want the world to know that we're interested, as Suzanne said, in any materials that document Philly jazz history, so that we will properly preserve them and make them available for research. Yeah. So the
Okay,
call is
thank you, Jack. Now we got some questions here. The first one is from Ramon Bieri. I hope I said your name right, Ramon. And this is probably to Max. He's enjoying the discussion very much. Is there any other unreleased music by Sounds of Liberation?
Yes. I don't even
And what?
I don't know if Monnette knows this.
Oh.
Okay.
So there's we were speaking earlier about the lofts in New York, and there was a Studio We was a loft in Manhattan down in the Village, and there is an entire concert with video footage, which I've worked hard
I've seen some of the video footage, but you got the music for it now?
So I have poor quality audio, I have poor quality audio, and there is just that little, maybe a 10 or 15-second video clip of them playing. But there was a gentleman named Juma Sultan who was kind of, his claim to fame is he played percussion with Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock because he lived in Woodstock. And Juma used to travel to the city often and videotape. He had kind of the machinery, the equipment to videotape these concerts. So he has video of Sounds of Liberation from 1973 and the full audio, which I've worked to try to get Juma. I actually drove to Woodstock and took him to lunch to try to convince him that he should let me see it, and he's a little hesitant about it. So I'm still working on it. But yes, there's a full concert. Monnette, I'll let you hear the audio is pretty poor, but I have the full. There's so funny. It's an hour and 10 minutes long, and they play 3 songs. That's
Wow.
Yeah, that's about right.
Well, telling me and Monnette are coming up there. We're gonna get it.
yeah, please.
I remember we had to go up about 6 flights of stairs to take all that equipment up there.
Oh,
That little loft. That was crazy.
all right. We have another question from Leslie. Which Sun Ra albums did Leroy Butler do the artwork for?
All right. So what I have is Leroy's actual artwork that he sketched for these albums. So he did, I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah.
He did Fireside Chat with Lucifer, and this is an original sketch for that. Sun Ra had a bunch of names for his albums, and Leroy did this one. I don't know if you can see it.
That's nice.
Mhm.
This is the one he's most famous for.
Is that the one Sun Ra colored in?
Yes, this is one of the ones that Sun Ra colored in. So this is called Discipline 27-2. So Leroy did that. And then the last one, which I was able to find the original work to, was this record.
Ooh,
Nice.
So
he was terrific.
yeah, he was incredible. Absolutely, just the most beautiful person, and just a sweetheart. And the first day I found out he was still alive, because I had searched for him for about a year, I dropped what I was doing. I drove to Germantown and I sat outside of his house waiting for him to come to the door. And he came to the door, and he was 94. I didn't want to scare him or rush up on him. I wasn't sure about his hearing or his sight or any of that stuff, but he was moving around pretty good. So I walked up and I had a picture of the Sounds of Liberation cover, and I said, Leroy, did you do this? And he said, oh, you like art? And I said, oh yeah, I really like art. And he said, well, come here, let me show you some stuff. And he
God, that's
2 hours we sat there discussing art, and he would doodle as we talked, and he was incredible. I got him out to the shows. He came out to the Sounds of Liberation shows so he can sign artwork.
wow.
We printed we made prints of all his work that I found, so that the family could sell them at the shows, and he can make some money off of that. So the prints are still available. I still have a bunch of those. So.
Oh, wow. All right, that's another thing I got to buy. All right. Here's another question from Carl Billards. How's Wayne Nance? How might he fit in? Miyoshi, I can't remember her last name. Does that ring a bell with anyone?
Well, Wayne Nance, we were just talking. Hi, Carl. Wayne Nance. We were just talking about him because he actually recorded a lot of Philadelphia music, and so he has a lot of archives. And I was talking to Kim from the Jazz Bridge about that.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, we'll have to follow up on that, Suzanne.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, we have another one from Carl, if you want to leave your email or something, we can get back to you on that. This is another one from Ramon Bieri, how are you preserving the album posters at a museum or institution? Now, what I'll tell you, Ramon, I can answer some of that. We are right now planning on, we're storing everything that we get. We've got quite a few things at the Blocks and Collection at Temple University. We were originally going to hopefully have the archives at the Cleft Club, but it turned out that didn't work out. So it looks like it's going to, Temple University is going to protect everything that me and Jack collect. And so everything's going to be preserved very, very well. I hope that answers your question. And if you know anybody who wants to donate a collection of Philly jazz memorabilia, or what we call material culture, definitely get in touch with us because we can preserve it. We've been working with Margaret McGriff, Jimmy McGriff's widow, to get all his memorabilia that she's collected. She's got manuscripts that he wrote with Benny Goldson, and we've also gotten Charlie Rice's, who is a very famous drummer in Philadelphia, and we're going to have his drum set for hopefully an exhibition in the future. So this is what this whole archive thing is about, is making sure a lot of this stuff doesn't accidentally get destroyed or thrown out. These are things that are very precious, and we do have horror stories, unfortunately, about things getting destroyed. One horror story is the Sun Ra house. The basement was periodically getting horribly flooded, and a lot of some of the stuff that was in the basement were Sun Ra's original manuscripts. But when you hear that, it makes you just want to cry. It really does. So we encourage people to preserve the stuff as well as they can at home, but when they can't, give us a call. Here's some important links. Here's Monnette's website. I'm sure she's got where she's going to be playing and what event she's going to be doing, and she's right at the top. And then the second one is for Brewerytown Beats, for Max's work. You notice that great image is a record player. It's not a CD. It's an LP.
Love it.
And the last link is phillyjazzhistory.org. You can go to our website, sign up for our monthly newsletter, find out what we're doing, and see what we have been doing, and get in touch. Definitely get in touch. This is a community effort. We're growing this archive together. That's the only way you can do an archive. All right, so let's put up the last one. This is my little ask at the end. Your tax-deductible donation will help us help the community build this Philadelphia Jazz Archive. So, and as soon as we really get a place to put it, which I'm hoping will be the Blocks of Collection, which it looks like it will be. We're gonna have a big party. COVID will be around, everybody will come. So please go to our site and go to the donate page and drop us a few bucks in the tip jar. We really appreciate it. So I'd like to thank Monnette for being here tonight. It's wonderful that you can talk with us about this incredible recording. I'd like to thank Max. And Max, would you set aside this album for me so I can just put it aside?
Of course. Actually, I want to mention that we took the band back into the studio just last year, and we have 5 or 6 songs recorded, and then we got a couple more that we want to run through in the future. And so
wow,
Sounds of Liberation band has actually recorded within the past year and a half a whole new album.
That is wonderful. Oh wow.
Okay, almost forgot.
All right, well, we'll see you next month on April 6th, and thank you so much for everybody, Jack, Max, Monnette, and Lex, our technician. And we'll see you on April 6th, and thank you so much, everyone, for coming.